Yeah. So I want to say, man, this is going to date me, but do you know a famous John Mclaughlan?
The jazz player from Canada.
Yeah, the Mahavishnu Orchestra, and yeah, I saw
Uh-huh.
I saw him in concert. Yeah, I'm not going to say when, but probably late 70s. Yeah,
Okay. Um,
fantastic guitarist. Yeah.
yes, yes, I would agree. And to confuse things further, I have played in a big band
Really?
with brass and wind. Yeah, but that's a hobby that surpasses me now. But yeah, I generally when I meet people stateside, that's one of the first things they draw my attention to is John McLaughlin, the jazz player.
That's funny. Yeah.
I guess you probably want to get a little bit of a background on me and why I reached out. I've been
Yeah.
speaking to Alexandra Stokes, having picked up her book, and I thought, this is chiming, this resonates with me on so many levels. So I reached out, and after that, she suggested that I do the same with your good self, John. But to give you some background on me and my journey with Agile, we have to go back probably to the mid 80s. And my first job leaving school was on a deep sea trawler. And
Oh,
we
wow.
very quickly learned uh, that we were it. If something needed to be done,
Right.
we
Yes.
had to do it.
Ah,
And from there, I progressed into a military service, and that allowed me to build on a can do attitude. And that whole mindset developed of can do. And then along came the Agile Manifesto, which to me at that time represented a template for a team charter. It built on that mindset, but more importantly, it gave a toolbox for defining and navigating problems. And that's something that stayed with me ever since. And if I'm coaching, regardless of the framework, regardless of the problems we're trying to solve, what I try and encourage is for everyone to bring it back to mindset and mindset approach.
yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, because I think the way I sort of define agility flourishing, and it's a means to an end, right? No one is asking for agility. They're asking for hopefully the value that your team, that you can provide. But agility flourishing is, I think, living the values and the principles as best as possible. And
Mm,
yeah,
that's a very good point because it intrigues me just how far those principles can bleed out into other aspects of your life. And
yeah,
a very important thing to me is how the principles themselves lend themselves permission and ability to evolve.
yeah. And the the one thing that I think I've learned on this reimagining agile journey, as slowly as I've been taking it, is I would say, like for yourself, the Agile Manifesto resonated. You grok it, you understand it, you live it. You don't need it almost. Right? I mean, other
I
than
wouldn't say
hey,
that.
it's kind of like, oh wow, hey, thanks for hitting a little bit like the Declaration of Independence here. Hey,
Yeah.
wow, really awesome. Thanks for hitting the high points, and it resonates. Um, but the hard part for me is for those who sort of like don't get it, don't understand it, actually need it,
Mm, hmm.
right?
Yeah.
In some sense, you were on a journey, probably much like those of us in the room. I had been doing a lot of Defense Department work. I had struggled with big heavyweight stupid processes for process sake, created my own way around it. Like necessity is the mother of invention, not quite as dramatic as being on a deep sea trawler with. I just was actually watching a video yesterday about something like, don't watch this if you get scared, and it showed,
Yeah,
the picture was like the what I believe to be the continental shelf out in the
mm,
ocean, and you see a little diver, and you see this just giant cliff, and the water's up here somewhere.
yeah. It's,
And then they showed the ships with, I don't know, 50-foot, 100, they looked like 100-foot sea snail.
ah,
I mean, I'm
yeah,
like, holy, you are all by yourself. You're on your own. No
yeah,
one's
yeah.
coming to help you. Yeah.
I think thankfully I was young enough not to know what fear was at the time. But as I've progressed through life, that feeling of mortality increases, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm looking at that and like, there's no freaking way I'm getting on that in that sea state. Like, nope,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
not
yeah.
gonna do it.
Well, we seek our thrills in different places.
Yeah, yeah, like doing mountain climbing, the thrill, the euphemistic way to talk about, like, there's one full slope we're on where almost like these big slabs, essentially, Italy slamming into Switzerland,
Mm,
big
hmm.
slabs that look like Stegosaurus dinosaur back, great for belaying. You could just throw the rope over, but you're walking on little half-inch things, and
Yeah.
on either side is 1,000 a foot. They call it exposure. It's thrilling exposure. Okay, that's one way to put it. Yeah,
And of course, you've got quite a strong climbing background.
a bit. Yeah, I've been able to have some fun in the Alps and the one trek in the Himalayas, but yeah, I'm not smart enough not to want to do those 7,000 plus meter, like, looks
Mm.
nasty as hell up there. I'm
It
okay
becomes
where I'm.
it's a bit more of a gamble in that territory now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
You
but
mentioned, John, about some of us not needing the manifesto, but those that actually do not understanding it. Do you see that manifest in particular layers of enterprise, or is it completely sporadic?
say that again. What?
So when you recognise that some teams, individuals are more in need of an understanding of the principles, but don't get it, do you see that manifest in particular layers of enterprise, or is it random?
Oh, well, I certainly don't have enough, let's say, data points per se, but in general, I think the larger the organization, the propensity increases, just because of um the couple that I've been, it turns into, yeah, we know the safe thing is kind of bullshit, but I can get some certificates. I can bolster my like things that have nothing to do with, can we help the business be successful? So it's maybe easier to hide, is a strong word, but to hide that kind of behavior in a big organization. Um,
Comfort in governance.
yeah, yeah. So e- ever since I kind of left the government, Defense Department consulting, I did not seek out those kinds of things to consult with, because yeah, like, things well beyond actually producing value are so much in play that I think the likelihood of, they might understand the manifesto, they might
Hmm.
know what, like, if you told, gave some of your experiences and, different ways you might approach X, Y, or Z, they might know. Yeah, not doing.
So that's interesting to me. Increasingly over the years, I've become aware of the influence of cognitive biases on some of that progress, and how, as humans, we can be blissfully unaware of the presence of those biases, and then equally unaware as to why they're actually blocking us in terms of making good decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things, a good colleague of mine that I've worked with for the past 5 years, Jon Turley, he's taught me some, I like to think of it as like secret sauce or things
Mm.
that, to your point, I was oblivious to. You know, I think part of it is some of us might have good intuition and do things that work, but
Mm-hmm.
not understand why.
Yeah.
Similar, like what you're describing is, so yes, so he's helped me realize there's a whole body of work around the way that people make their meaning is super important. Around, this is Michael Hammond's words, but around vertical development, is horizontal development is what we do in school, or I want
Mm-hmm.
to
Mm-hmm.
learn JavaScript, or I want to learn Scrum. Okay, big deal. But vertical development is more of, I want to try to help the team and myself grow our capacity to deal with the complex that we're facing, and be more comfortable with it, and be more effective as a collaboration force, so to speak. So I've learned a lot about vertical development and about, um, in essence, making that which was implicit, try to make it explicit, to pull out the, like, because yeah, you're right. You might detect a cognitive bias, but how do you stop? Wait, what did you just say? Why do you
Yeah.
why do you think
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Or in some sense, why do you feel that? We've got a great sensing system that we often ignore
Mm.
because
100%. 100%.
we're, I don't know, we're scientific or we're engineer. But yeah, that's a big thing that Jon has taught me too, is matter of fact, I often will say, in the face of complexity at work or the opportunity to deal with something fuzzy, if you have the ability, like what I like to be able to do is withstand the discomfort of the unknown
Yes.
longer than most people, and then carve off bits as we can and put it into the known, and work on it. But don't throw that out, because even if you don't know which direction to go, take a step and trust in your body. You will feel.
That's the process. That's the process. The one that we need to lean into. And it's interesting about the vertical development in line with the horizontal development that begins to lean towards dimensions. And I'm curious, you must have seen Agile evolve lots over the years. Here's a question for you. What do you think is the next frontier for Agile to broach? Where
Hmm.
do you think it's going with the advent of AI, etc.?
Well, from a, let's say I don't know if this is an agile thing or not, but I think certainly there are some pretty amazing tools out there. I,
Mm.
I, I was in Belgrade in November. I spoke there, but participated in a in a fun little workshop where reminds me, I bugged him to give me his, how he prompted the class, and because sat next, like if you and I were sitting at the table, we did whatever the little exercise was, grab Chat GPT and put these prompts in, and I believe some of it was potentially, was it trying to get at BDD style, write something in it. I forget, but it was, something along the lines that might save you time. And matter of fact, I was on a call last night. There's this cool little development tool, like a Jira competitor, called
Mhm.
Dev Stride. Um, and they're a nice young couple that started this kind of, and So they invited me to like be on their advisory board. Most of the things that I advise them against is don't overbuild, because it's like, but anyway, the, now that I've properly lost my place, where's I headed
The
with?
Jira competitor, BDD.
Yeah, but backing up beyond that, there was a reason I was bringing this in, where we're going, AI. So there's a lot, some of the other folks on the calls work in very different environments than me. Some are in banking and insurance. Also, like that, here, the first part of the call was talking about dependencies. And I'm like, I don't want a lot of support for dependencies, because I want the teams like feel like you might become an enabler for their addiction to lousy designs that make it easy to have lots of dependencies. No,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
want it
We
to
don't
be
want dependencies.
no,
Yeah.
I want it to be painfully hard. Anyway, that's a bit of an aside, but they were talking a lot about AI and things that help them, generate some of the front end things around features and things like that. I'm like, yeah, that was what I recall practicing with Chat GPT and things like that in Belgrade. And it was kind of fascinating to see. But at the same time, the thought that went through my head was, oh my goodness, what it spits out. I don't know. I might be able to do it. I'm going to have to spend almost as much time. Is that right? Is that what I want?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
that looks like a frivolous feature. Like, oh, really? Maybe, so. mm,
It's the grooming of the output, which still requires an SME to be able
yeah,
to
right.
do that. Yeah.
Yeah. So while I see those kinds of things, the allure, much like I still write code for I support firefighters and have a nice web app. Got quite a few fire department, everything from small rural fire departments to 18 station fire departments in big Arlington, Texas, to big
Commendable.
big pharma. So places that have lots of buildings and laboratories. And anyway, it's a pre-incident planning tool that lets you try to be prepared, essentially, for, instead of like, I wonder where the water shut off is. Well, the sprinkler is ruining your laboratory, like a
Yeah,
million
it's good to know that ahead of the time, isn't it?
$1 million an hour. The guy told me, like, oh, okay, that's legit cost. Not just a bunch of wet paper and wet computers. No, ruined. Anyway, so I use GitHub Copilot or IntelliJ, the JetBrains. My Ruby development environment has a similar kind of a AI, and sometimes it's like, wow, I swear it reads my mind.
Mm.
Astounding. Like,
Yeah,
but
but
it's very small. And I talked to some expert about this. And I said, is that because it's mostly my code? I'm I'm not the best by any stretch. I'm more brute force and not elegant, but I get the job done. And I'm consistent, very consistent. And he said, yeah, that has a lot to do with it, because it's like, I I think it was, I'm sure it was, I was so astounded, I backed up and took a video recording to share with some of my nerd buddies, because I'm like, wow. But then another time, it's making a suggestion that's completely trash. So to your point, you can either think of it as in the hands, just like everything, in the hands of my father, my Swiss Inca table saw that I inherited built musical instruments and wonderful furniture. My hands, it's not going to happen, right? So a fool with a tool is still a fool. So
telephone. Yeah.
that's where I think there will be some acceleration in the right hands. But to your point, a subject matter expert who can't distinguish good from bad, the necessary from the over the top. So yeah, I think it might accelerate people being able to pull away, right? The mediocres, it might, yeah, it might help.
But
help.
as you say, just as any tool would allow that to happen, it's exactly the same.
I think so. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I don't know. What do you think?
Um, I think it will get better. I do think it's still subject to its own biases. It's definitely led by how we engage with it, how we interact with it, and it learns. So it can learn from positive interaction, and equally, it can learn from other poorer data sets. As an example, just for fun over a coffee, a group of us made some inquiries, a simple inquiry. How many R's are in strawberry? And the the return was 2 R's. There are 2 R's in strawberry. Okay. So where is the third R in strawberry? And it proceeded to tell us exactly where the third R was in strawberry. We continued. So how many R's are in strawberry? There are 2 R's in strawberry. And this argument continued for maybe 20 minutes.
Isn't
And
that funny?
we returned a few days later and there were 3 R's in strawberry.
Oh, wow. It learned.
It learned. Yeah, but there you go. There you go. And I think I put together some questions just to kind of drive conversation and try and be original, John, when you are subjected to so many questions and so many meetings. But as we talk about the use of AI and we lean into how agile evolves, do you see a place for that evolution solving some societal problems going forward? Maybe climate change, food poverty, those kind of spaces. Not to get too political about things, but
No, that's not. It's, it can be politicized, but um,
not by us.
no, my first gut, what just came right pouring out to the front of my brain was, it's a people problem. It's not right. It's a, I mean, back in the 70s, I'm hiking in the Alps and I see a candy wrapper, I pick it up. I mean, I've been doing conservation, and I'm an environmentalist since I've been a kid. Um, but who thought that was a good idea to just to leave the candy wrapper, right? It's,
Yeah.
I know, let's throw a cigarette butt out on the floor. Someone else will pick it up. Really? Okay, that's pretty selfish. So yeah, it's to me, no, not a chance. Only because it's, my gut says it's a people problem, whether it's um even the perception of what the problem is, because I get skeptical. I don't know if whenever people and money and it, you have to find, I mean, it might help us find ways to better angles, because there has to be some kind of, I think, a tug of a direction, some sort of a magnetic force. I don't know. It's so
I think I
hard.
understand. I I feel I kind of understand what you're saying there, and what's coming to my mind is that perhaps it helps us to quantify the problem, but points towards the fact that we are still the problem.
Yeah, like matter of fact, I was just at the local 5 and 10, which is like stepping back, a 5 and dime, little lunch counter in a in a department, like a 100-plus-year-old store in town that I love giving. During COVID, I made sure I gave business. I always give them way more money than the bill is, just because it's a small mom and pop place. And meanwhile, the government leaves Walmart open, but they had to
Mm.
take every other seat out, right? Really? Okay. Thanks. That kind of crap. I have an aversion to large anything, government, companies, because they all are right. All of us are stupider than any, like it's just seems to be a part of a bloat. Anyway, the we were just talking about one of the guy's sons works in, I happen to be on a school board, works in the one of the school's cafeterias. And sometimes they have extra food, so supplies,
Mm-hmm.
like raw material.
Yeah.
And he was asking some of the other schools, hey, can you use this? I don't know, onions, just making it up. And then his dad said he got in trouble. Maybe it was his grandson. His granddad said he kind of got in trouble for that. Like, yeah, that's like, who knows why, but that's the kind of stupidity. And I said, yeah, or why can't we give it to we have a local in our small town. I usually give money, but so I don't have like an extra 100 pounds of onions or something. Well, how about give it to the food bank? I'm
Mm.
not allowed to do that either. Why? Right? There you go. The problem is stupidity in government.
Yep.
Like the unelected bureaucrats, sitting in their comfortable homes behind their Zooms, making decisions for others. So I'm pretty sure AI won't stop that. And even
But
those,
it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. And it probably doesn't sit with the principles that we live and we are used to. So I think that probably leads me to another question, John, and that is when you see stupidity of that ilk, or you see the principles as you intended them to be applied being misappropriated, how do you yourself stay true to those principles, but also try and guide and point others to do the same?
that's a good question. Matter of fact, he mentioned, like, I said, oh, you're on the school board. I said, yeah. He goes, yeah, I think, and I don't know the time frame, but he said, maybe it was the same guy. The grandson went and watched the school board because the grandfather said, yeah, I used to go. And he said something, but he goes, oh, geez, they're just a bunch of idiots that don't know anything or something like that. I'm like, okay. Or they don't have any common sense. That's what he said. None of them have common sense. I said, well, I try to apply that. It's of course, it's one person's opinion. And dropping in on the weird world of being on a school board. But what I try to do, whether it's in the work setting or there, for example, is I'm that voice that tries to raise the different perspectives, because sometimes people are dug in, and so I've had success in terms of being, I don't know, it's not really a moderator, but just being someone that tries to not take sides, but raise things that other people might not be able to see. And I've
A
had
neutral
success.
catalyst.
Yeah, I've had success where people go, they were a hard no at the beginning of the, open debate on a topic. And then they switched their positions because I showed different ways to think about it, or would ask other people who I knew had different perspectives, whether it be someone in the administration, like just try to draw out and,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of help chip away at the certainty with which some people hold what they think was the truth. Because one of the things, there's a cool technique in Michael Hammond's approach that Jon Turley and I use. And it's when there's something maybe a little challenging in front of the group, so to speak, or somebody, says something that sounds a little accusatory, or gets somebody a little upset, to practice a different way. So instead of how we might normally, just like that guy said, yeah, I don't have any common sense. All right, well, let's try to, it's back, let's talk about something specific. So the technique is simply, sometimes you have to practice it, but it's try to first acknowledge what is going on in as, let's say, observable as possible. Most of us would say, yes, indeed, those are big waves. We all agree, right? That kind of thing. this is going to be a bad analogy, but the point is try to
Stick
say,
with it, John. Stick with it.
yes, try to say with something that is pretty uncontroversial. And then this is the trick. Then you say, this might come off a little wrong, or you might have to couch it, but what I make up about this in my own, I'm thinking you don't like me, John. I'm making that up. How does that land? How does that feel? And then stop. So it's instead of geez, John, you don't like me, instead of like blurting out something that is truly made up in your head, whether it's about, something at work or anything. The point is, try to just make some observations, then purposely, because this is a very good way to disarm whoever you're talking to, by admitting, I'm telling myself this story based on how I see things, that we kind of agreed we all saw the same thing. No, it's not because you hate the company that you decided to write a bug, and that now you're making that crap up. No, there was a bug we all agreed to, but no, I'm not, right? You see it all the time where people just trip right into the certainty of the story that they tell themselves. And so if you just tweak that model to say, what's going on, what I make up about it, what do you think? And then shut up. Like, don't keep talking, but just say, how does that land? What? And then just wait. So it's a fascinating way to try to bridge those maybe contentious things between people.
I've used a similar technique, not quite the same, but similar, whereby it starts with a playback, but very widely, and then we funnel the narrative until we get to specifics, and at which point we should all be focused on the detail of the issue rather than the feelings around the issue. Doesn't always work. It's dependent on the stakeholders. But if it's done as a group, there's more buy-in from the group. It removes that confrontational aspect that you speak about, which we deal with all the time.
Exactly. All the time.
Yes. And we need debate. We need good debate. And again, with those principles to hand, understanding them and leaning them, because quite often I see that they're referenced, they're pointed towards, and then they're put side of desk. We don't actually spend time to understand what they mean, how they can be applied, and how they help us. So I really do try and encourage that element of things as well. What's been the biggest successes, and equally the biggest failures that you've seen, the biggest missteps that you've seen come off of your experience with these principles? Forgive me if I'm putting you on the spot there, John.
No worries. I think, one thing that funnily enough that popped in my head was this place that had hundreds of lamp stacks, Linux, whatever that stands for, I forget that. Probably Python servers out in the wild. And they were looking for help to improve their way of working. And the presence of a few experts that had a lot of power. What I would say, it's like one of those things where it took me a little while to crack the code of what's going on. Like hundreds of, of course they had safe and arts and things like that. So all kinds of activity going on. Only a handful of people had the guts sometimes to, oh, can we vote on this? Yeah, no, it's like a 0. What? So I often want to write something up about beware the expert because
Yeah,
the experts will lead you to, down a path over a cliff. You need them when you need them, but there's was a crazy, this one metric that the probably some really senior person wanted was like, I finally figured out it was the number of like conversions of those things because they're out in the wild. People are able to put their own, like I often would joke, don't let John have access to the server. Been there, done that. It works for a while, not a good plan, right? Yes, because who knows what I end up putting on there or sudo, what was that again? Yeah, I'll just get it to work and I will. But that's when okay, now I need an expert. I need some, like sysadmin person to do it right. Well, imagine that in the hundreds
yeah.
across the world. Um, and so it turned out that the goal was sort of the number of conversions of this, and it was a nightmare. And I thought we were making progress. Talking with a couple of the real, I mean, they took it as a badge of honor that it took months, maybe even 6 months to become productive on the team. Because I would take that as a failure personally.
Hmm.
I worked hard to go from the first time I had to onboard somebody on another project that took way too long. I worked the rest of many years so that by the time I was at the job, say 10 years ago, we could get an intern in for the summer. They would be committing the end of their first day. That to me, that was okay. That's what I want. I want it to not be this. Admittedly, I'm not saying they're like touching anything real, right? I mean, just prove that they got everything set up. They're able to do something constructive. All the little levers and mechanisms work. But anyway, there's this whole expert, the love of the complexity. Like, no, I prefer simplicity, elegance.
Hmm.
It takes it's the old line of I would have made this shorter if I had more time. What?
Yes, yes,
No, it's
yeah.
easy. Anybody can puke out a complicated design or a complicated process or, safe, which, but so the biggest failure was, kind of getting to, thought we had a good meeting, redoing this process flow. I don't even remember what it was. I do have a little screenshot of it just because I couldn't believe what happened. Thought we were moving towards a good way to try to simplify this thing, then ended up with like when I draw this as a flow chart, it's only about this wide because it's how many, I was like, oh my goodness, are you freaking kidding me? And so I stopped, I just saw myself out the door. It's like, all right, this is not gonna work. They I guess judge their value and their worth based on how complicated we can make this seem.
That's
I couldn't,
incredibly.
I could not use my magic ways. I mean, some people on a team approached me and knew that they would have preferred, they knew where I was headed. And,
Hmm. Hmm.
like I'm sure if you were on had been there, yeah, more of that, please. But could not overcome these top dogs, this man and a woman that were, I mean, really smart, really sharp, really, and just
Yeah,
so,
yeah, I see that. That's incredibly impactful and resonates strongly with me. And I should not be surprised when I recognize that A, you're driven by simplicity, and B, I'll hazard a guess and say that some people may interpret you as being impatient, where the converse to that is that we like progress. So the reason I should not be surprised by that is the ethos behind the manifesto. And I'm struck by what might have been your strongest inspiration and your biggest contribution to that manifesto.
yeah, I was not quiet, even though I was probably one of the younger ones, like, oh wow, Uncle Bob, I have magazines in the attic of our barn that he was the editor of and articles and yeah, I mean famous people, XP and But at the same time, you can imagine my heavyweight experience doing DoD stuff. You know, 3 out of those 4 bullets, not the first one, but the other 3, very much about, yes, what I had faced. You know, I learned better to build a relationship with the client than trying to, you know, get the year-long research and development statement of work estimated to plus or minus 5%. Yeah, that's just, nah, let's just cut. Anyway, you're right. I would like to think I've brought a lot of these kind of ideas, and I think the whole thing is that it resonated with lots of us, right? So
Mhm.
uh, I'm sure one of the most lovely things about the gathering is we had no idea anything would come of it. So there's a beautiful lack of, let's say, you, it's, you know, not quite as, it's probably worse than if 10 of us watched, you know, literally sat there and watched a car accident and then were, you know, interviewed. It'd be funny to see, you know, if you could visualize what we all saw, it would probably be humorous. So it's even worse than that because it was drinking and skiing and meeting, drinking and meeting. Um, so I love the fact that no one has a lock on what really happened.
It just happened.
Yeah, and I, you know, the phrase I use, I know Ari loves this, is we left our egos at the door.
Oh, yeah. Isn't that a prerequisite to any progress? Any progress of any significance will not happen if there's a presence of ego at all. It comes straight back to being entrenched in thinking, not navigating those biases that we touched on earlier,
Yeah,
and being unable to understand and define the challenge. And if we can't do that, we can't move forward. It's got to
right.
be. It's got to be. Uh, it, to me, that's one of the. You probably feel where I'm coming from there. That's one of the strongest anti-patterns to progress and simplicity and success that I've ever experienced.
Yes. Yeah. Um, in most of my presentations, I always have 2 funny slides with like one word on them, or small. You know, one is be humble,
Mm.
even when you know you're right. You know, I like to add a little humor. But the ego is so destructive in our profession of trying to produce software, for example, because the other one is be lazy. So, um, I mean, you just can't not see this, and at least for me, I'll say the typical symptom is people doing far too much detailed work, way too far in advance of the need. Because why? Well, because we think we judge our value by, well, I'm a UX person, so I'm going to do UX. I'm a requirements person, I'm going to do that. You know, whatever it is, because we turn things into roles and we give titles and we give
Mm-hmm.
certifications, it just encourages, instead of being lazy, it encourages excess. That's got diminishing returns at best, possibly worse than that. You know, we get into that sunk cost fallacy, like, well, I got a
Yeah,
130-page doc. We got to stick to that, don't we? We spent a lot of time on it.
yeah,
Maybe, maybe not.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I have an experience from maybe 20 years ago where I didn't listen to instinct and um, jumped straight into the camp of sunk cost. And I learned that lesson. I have that T-shirt. I wear the scars. I have the tattoo. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. So it's I feel like it's a little bit of a blessing, maybe having my engineering, you know, aerospace engineering, and that the whole system, you know, you can't escape it in terms of you know, like a building you can over design. Who cares? The earth will still hold it up. You know, you just
Yeah.
spent too much money, or but you can't, if you do that in an aircraft, then you don't go as far, or you can't carry as much, right? I mean, there is no free lunch, so to speak, in designing an aircraft to do certain missions. Because, every you wiggle one part, it's going to affect some other part.
Mhm.
I remember in one of my textbooks or a book later, a funny little page of an aircraft designed by different departments. You got the propulsion department has, just giant big ass engines. The aerodynamics people is like a little needle. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah, yeah.
overemphasize that, to your point, that your bias is where it can really impact. And so being able to have that more holistic approach is so important. But if you don't have that, then just set a timer, as I like to joke. All right, I'm going to give you 8 hours to do the UX and show me something. Not, so you have to, what I see is people standing up teams that don't have enough doers. They got a lot of people above, on top of the doers to do all the little tiny, oh, it's a multifunction, cross-functional team. Isn't that what you want, John? No, actually, I could care less. I just want people who can do the different functions. Like I can do crappy UX. I'm pretty good at it. And I can do a lot of, so I think there's this mistaken
Hmm.
world of roles. I mean, I had to look up a racy the other day, or I mean the other year. What's racy? Oh, roles and account. I I don't know. I have trouble with all that kind of things. It's probably
I,
useful in some cases, but
I tend to agree. The T-shaped cross functionality is a state of utopia which can, on occasion, be achieved, so very easily disrupted. The collection of skill sets that work uniquely together through communication and as a true team is the middle ground that becomes really effective.
yeah, I like to
In my mind, my humble
yeah,
opinion.
yeah, I like to say one of my skills is, a fair amount of knowledge about the whole shebang, like enough to be dangerous, but I know when I need an expert.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, one funny project we did for a large paint manufacturer who was very matrixed, stood up a project. All right, we're going to do this new agile thing. I was working with John Stahl at Lean Dog. And it was so funny because like right before my there were a few of us were getting things set up, getting ready, maybe the week before, and then Monday, the team's going to show up or something like that. And like, wow, right before my very eyes, a like what I envisioned as a project Gantt chart with resource leveling appeared. Like, hi, I'm your point 4 DBA. Hi, I'm your 0.6 UX person. Like literally, here's the days of the week and the hours I'm gonna be here. I mean, like, wow. Okay, I mean, I get it. I'm not making fun of it per se, but but like the DBA person, for example, I said, look, nice guy. But after the beginning, and because I'm just look, I don't do .NET, but hey, I found this cucumber like tool, so we can do BDD. Oh, I found this RSpec like tool, so we can do TDD. We need to start doing this way. Oh, okay, cool. And they start researching some stuff. Um, and then suddenly, what do you mean we can't create, like a class and a database table to go with it? Oh no, we got to talk to DBA. What? No, 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 not a chance. And I said, look, son, to this really nice DBA guy. Uh, you know, I've been doing like DDL since you were knee high to a grasshopper. I don't need your help in how to create table. No, like I can do that with one hand tied behind my back. I don't care what database it is. But I will say I'll know when I need you. If there's some crazy ass performance or
Yeah.
something, who the heck knows? But you're just going to be a horrible bottleneck. And you don't want to be in that. So he was really cool about it and loved it and said, okay, thanks, bye. But we got along well. And I'd established enough of a rapport with him prior to that. But yeah, it's things like that, right? That's the mentality that It's everywhere.
Mm.
It's expert mentality. It's Taylorism, and Taylorism is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Some think he even cheated on some of the things, and you know, not. What's funny is posthumously his wife got an award for Frederick Taylor in Mussolini's office.
Ah,
Because those control freaks love it, right? They're not only controlling the factories, they're controlling the people. But anyway, yeah, Taylorism is a curse because we're not building cars. Like use it for parts that maybe some things we do are
yeah.
simplistic. Fine, knock yourself out. I don't care if you do waterfall. Anything creative and innovative, and we're exploring. Yeah, you're foolish to think it's that concrete.
Can't be. It's impossible. So, John, quite literally, you wrote the book, and after, well, we'll not quantify the years, but after the depth of experience and um, occasions and situations and people that you've met and everything you've been exposed to, how does Jon Kern remain inspired and dedicated towards the development of Agile?
Because yeah, that's a wonderful question, because I will admit when all the certification stuff started happening, I don't know, when was that? Mid 2000s. I saw the writing on the wall and I was like, all right, I tried a little bit here and I was like, all right, see y'all. Good luck. Good luck with that. That's not the point. You kind of completely misses the point, but I'm glad someone's making money off of it. I love making money. But I'll just go work with teams and have fun building our own kick-ass way of working. So I did drop out and then kind of came back in maybe within the last 5+ years, something like that, to kind of give it another shot, try to do something. Reimagining Agile is part of that, because I started recognizing there are people in the audience that, yeah, they're not like you and me. It's kind of like they only know Agile. What? Right? They don't know what, RUP was, or, I did mill standard 2167. They didn't know any of those heavyweight processes. They don't even know waterfall typically. So they know some quote unquote Agile, which is often wrong, which is often no, Scrum. That ain't, that could be
Yeah.
Agile. It doesn't have to be Agile. It could be also stupid as hell, however you implement it. So that was part of it. Another thing was I did something with the Polish Agile community. They were retranslating the manifesto, even though there already was a translation that Ward had put on the site. And they said, hey, we've got it down to a handful of questions. Can you help us? Oh, sure. That sounds like fun. Fascinating, because I never thought about, okay, this sounds stupid in hindsight. You mean the words don't translate the same? No.
I, I, I
not.
read I read about this. I read about this, and it had me in kinks.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was, I think it's the one about maximizing the work not done, that kind of like Bass Ackwards, we know what it
Yeah,
means.
yeah.
Yeah, something like that. And I think one of them, at least one of them, maybe two of them, they were like, our language doesn't even support that. I don't know enough about language, but that phrasing, or that we can't say it like that. What did you mean? Yeah. So that gave me another like, oh geez. Not only is it hard enough, like as we said earlier, if you grok the manifesto, you don't need it. And if you need it, you might not understand it. So I often say you have to experience it. You have to experience Agile. You have to, or at least be of such a mindset to try things and be a little more holistic and understand what's going on and be way above the fray, which is hard. So that, and then a good friend of mine, Daniel Markham, who we usually meet once a week, do nerd stuff. He said, look, John, most teams, when I was consulting with teams, people on a team often knew what to do. It's just the system. Why beat my head against the wall? I tried a few times and nothing changes. So there's that too. He says, new people with the manifesto, what are they supposed to do with it? Where's the start here? Yeah, so he threw a bunch of like challenging statements around like, yeah, you're right. Because to me, it's a little bit like a user's manual back in the day.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
read them early on and start working with the tool, read them again and go, oh, that's what that means. So I'm like, maybe it's a little bit like that, to read it every 6 months or do a retro on, pick a principle and do I don't know. So those things kind of combine to reinvigorate, kind of giving it one more shot to see if we can uncover stories, exemplars, places where agility is flourishing. Maybe you have one and we can have another conversation about that. But the idea is using them as beacons of hope. Like, okay, stop paying attention to the LinkedIn bashing articles, which when you read them, half the time, almost I think every time I look at one, the things they talk about are not agile. Don't call that agile and say agile's bad. And that's not agile. But I want more people to be able to defend it, so to speak, because more what true,
Yeah.
it's hard to say true agile, but
100%. If we really boil this down to its most simplistic form, then it works, and it works every time. What doesn't work is the people.
And what's the first principle? I mean, first value? Oh, that's right. Individuals and interactions over processing tools. I'd love to claim that we knew that should be the first one, but there's no chance in hell that
No.
You saw the photo that I took, with people standing at the board. Oh, we wordsmithed it to death, so we all agreed to it because I'm kind of a freakazoid about writing and wordsmithing. But yeah, we didn't say, oh, this should be first. At least I don't remember that. But it should be first, and it is first, luckily. Yeah, you're right. It's the people. Yeah.
It's the people. And everything's people. But anything we do, it's all about the people. And talking about people, John, you've been incredibly kind and gracious with your time for me. So I'd like to offer something back. I don't know what that might be yet, but if there's something I can help you with, then please feel free to call upon me. And that's a free pass.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll share this. If you think we can publish this if you want, or you can certainly share it with your folks. But this is a fun time. I love, as you can tell, I love chatting with folks like yourself, with Alexandra. Yeah.
So Alexandra is one of the responsibilities I've got in the current role as an agile coach to Weir is to facilitate the agile COP, and Alexandra's kindly agreed to come along and speak to us sometime in the future. I wonder if I might be able to tempt you to do the same.
Yes. Count me in.
Yes, fantastic.
And the real cool thing, I've never been in that part of the world. So if you get somebody to pony up money to travel,
I'm reaching behind the sofa just now, John.
Yeah, it might take more than that. I'm pretty far. Yeah, I don't
Okay,
think
fantastic. Have you any questions for me? I'm conscious I've been asking you all the questions this evening.
No, well, I think as I mentioned, if you have some stories that might serve us in that exemplars, the places where agility is flourishing, that's like a side quest of mine where it's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to Alexandra is pick her brain. I have her book. I was reading it today at lunch at the lunch counter. There's probably some stories in there that I'm trying to get some stories that we can dig a little deeper and kind of see how, like it's not so much what went on per se, but it's like, how did you, because some places we've interviewed is like, what? How did you get the, I don't want to say the nerve, right? How did you get the nerve to do something like it? And more importantly is how did the organization, so if you have stories like that, it's really trying to dig at some root causes in a good sense, not in a failure sense, but you're not root cause failure analysis, but root causes as to setting up the environment to allow it to flourish. Because the more that we can expose that, and oftentimes find things which have not been said yet, which takes a few meetings with you, for example, they try to,
Yeah,
get you
yeah,
to
yeah.
get, you're like, oh,
There's a
good
few,
question. Yeah.
there's a few, there's a few potential examples coming to mind, which perhaps we could take offline and explore or
Yeah,
dig around with. I think there'd be a lot of value in doing that, John.
good. Then yeah, book me again and let's do it.
Super.
Yeah, that is what I hope to leave sort of in this next pass, is some hope that people, not a new manifesto, just some stories with, here's what they did in that context. Small little things are often what it is. And you could try it, where you work and see if it works and report back. And so it's a hypothesis that
Yeah, yeah.
there are places where it's flourishing, and there are some simple moves that maybe we can share and see if we can budge the needle for the
I'd love
future.
to do that. I'd love to do that. And I'd be delighted if we can share the video. I'm sure that my community would take a lot of value from seeing this, but I can already anticipate the first question they're going to ask when they see this played back. And that is, now don't answer this question, John, but that question is probably going to be, how far did he actually walk during that session?
Great one. You can leave that as a teaser.
Absolutely.
I could tell you, but I won't.
No,
Yeah.
don't spoil that. I'm sure there's a way we can monetize this.
Yeah, a little betting, a little side bet. Yeah.
Shall we call it there, John?
Yeah, definitely. I appreciate your time, John. It was wonderful to get to meet you, at least on Zoom, which is a pretty fantastic way to span
Yeah,
the
yeah,
time. Yeah.
yeah,
So I look
yeah.
forward to chatting again, and
Absolutely.
I'll pump this up I'll share the Zoom recording with you, but maybe I'll throw it up on YouTube or something like that, and then we can do with it what.
Absolutely fine. I'm 100% okay with that.
Cool.
Splendid. I've had a great time, John. Thank you very much.
Likewise. And I
Enjoy
want
your day.
more sea stories next time.
Oh, well, there's some are not for public consumption.
Yeah, right. It might be me over drinks or something. Yeah.
And there you go. That would be equally splendid as well. Thank you again.
All right. Thank you, John. Take
Bye
care.
now. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.